Mario, where just one SEC team makes it to the playoff and that's it, then to hell with it. I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, as you should be. I've always been the same way, man. And even when the playoff was not how it is right now, I was kind of like, I'd always push against people that are like, oh, root for the SEC. It's an SEC school. Like, no, screw you. And that's partly true for me. I'm not gonna lie. I told you about my parlay that Texas A&M ruined, unfortunately. And this has nothing to do with my bet, but just an aside, man. I'm not crazy about the new overtime format. I kind of miss the way it used to be, and I know that's at LSU's expense. The reason they made that rule was because of the 7 overtime game, but the 2-point conversions, and this coming from somebody that respects soccer, unlike our producer over here across the way, I kind of don't like the penalty shootout feel that it has towards the end with just going for two and going for two. They should make it to where after the third overtime, you should have to go for two. I think it used to be something similar to that,
that's how it was,
like the old format. But I just kind of don't like the back and forth. And what a crappy way to lose for Texas A&M, right? Dropping it in the end zone on a really nice assigned play, so that part of it sucks. But honestly, I kind of miss the old format.
I'm okay with it to an extent, because when LSU played A&M back when, and they had the 7 overtime game, neither defense was ever getting a stop because they were gassed. They'd all played 100-plus plays like that. So I would be okay with going to the shootout maybe after 4 overtimes. Like I'm okay with the end destination. I just think we get there too soon, right? 2 overtimes feels a little early. And another factor in that is they, as you said, they passed the rule after LSU and A&M because they said it was unfair to the defenses to continue to play so many snaps. Well, now, since then, Mario, we have shortened the games immensely by not stopping the clock after first downs anymore, and by also going to an NFL-style clock anywhere where when you go out of bounds, the clock continues to run and different things like that. So the game has gotten shorter anyway. So I'm with you to an extent. I think we should go to the shootout, but I think it should happen a little later. After 2 overtimes feels a little soon.
Fair enough, and we'll recap this in more detail when we get to the college football talk in a little bit. But rough go for Ole Miss, man. And I know a lot of people kind of saw this coming with the way Florida is playing, and there's a discussion to be had there, certainly, with Billy Napier. He deserves credit, I think, for still getting them pumped up. But just a disastrous loss for Ole Miss, man, and it's frustrating because this is not the same team that I saw against Georgia. Like, Ole Miss is a team that I think built through the portal, but doesn't have much continuity. And maybe the day-to-day, they're not the most together team because they just turn in these flat performances at the least opportune time. And it feels like every time, Casey, whether it's on our radio show or on here, anytime I talk well about Lane Kiffin, anytime he has some serious momentum going, it seems like he just messes it up as soon as I say anything positive about him. So rough go for the Rebels.
I felt, and first and foremost, I was rooting for chaos. So I was all for Florida in that one. But at the end of the game, I legitimately felt bad for Jackson Dart because you could see he was mentally burnt to a crisp. Like, he throws an interception that he thinks loses the game. The dude's literally crying on the bench. Then that interception gets overturned. Immediately he has to go from the lowest low back to game mode. And then the first play after that, like, he's burnt. He throws an interception the very next play. He just didn't have anything left to give. Ole Miss struggled through that one. Florida gets the win. Good on Napier, man. He is doing more than showing that he is worthy of saving his job. They're very hot to end the season. They're going to probably beat Florida State Saturday, get to 7-5. Who would have thunk it? And for Ole Miss, that big price tag that everybody talked about, $20 million that they spent in the portal, it's $20 million is probably going to end up being right down the pipes because I don't think they're going to the college football playoff.
So a lot of LSU fans still hate Ole Miss, from the old school part of things. I respect that. A lot of them more our age hate Florida, which I respect, So a lot of them were not super happy about that win against Texas A&M. But given the climate right now with Texas A&M and LSU, I think that's a necessary sacrifice, right? Most LSU fans were happy about that one. I think all, if not like 99.9% of LSU fans were happy about what happened in Norman with Alabama losing to Oklahoma.
Oh, hell yeah.
And we'll talk, again, more in detail about this game later. But my overarching take from this game, Casey, is I don't want to hear anybody mention Alabama anywhere near the playoff. It's to the point where if you ask me, can a 3-loss Alabama get into the playoff, I almost want to fight you. Like, I almost literally want to throw hands with you. Like, that is something that I know is going to continue. I already saw a graph from ESPN, and it shouldn't. And I know they killed LSU. LSU is completely an independent variable in this conversation. LSU is bad too. But Alabama is a bad football team. Oklahoma is another bad football team that killed them in their place, and they are not a playoff team, not by any stretch of the imagination.
They don't have good losses, dude. Vanderbilt's not very good. I mean, they're just okay. Oklahoma the same. They're just all right. Tennessee is probably the best of the losses, but yeah, dude, you go over there, you get blown out 24-3. Okay, so here's a great perspective here. Tulane scratching and clawing, trying to figure out their path in. Tulane lost to Oklahoma by less than Alabama did, and it was a far more competitive game.
Hashtag perspective. That's a good stat.
Far more competitive game. So if you're going to give Alabama that benefit of the doubt, you got to be willing to give the same to the Green Wave. I don't think Alabama should get in either. I don't think there's anything that they could do to change my mind. What are you going to do? You're going to blow out Auburn? I don't care about that. You're not going to the SEC championship game. Your resume is what it is. I think they're landlocked. Now, I do think the TV executives are going to want them there. So if we have another couple of weekends full of upsets, there is a chance that they can maybe backdoor. But I think that would do the sport an injustice. I really do.
Man, that's going to be the saddest Iron Bowl ever. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. So Casey's best thing was all the misery for all of our SEC brethren. That was a lot of fun. For my best thing, I don't mean to be too depressing here, but it has to do with Steve Gleason. And I don't know if you heard, but Steve Gleason recently was in an accident. He was leaving his van. He was going to speak to a clinic, a volleyball clinic.
I didn't hear that.
And, yeah, apparently he got in an accident. He fell, and everything is okay, thank God. But obviously that's a really scary scene, to find Steve like that, given everything that he's going through, given his condition. And his wife, through Steve Gleason's Twitter account, put up an update and kind of told everybody, like, hey, we're okay. This is really scary. But through all that, through the traumatic experience, she threw in a shot at Jake Paul.
I did see that.
And I just want to read the tweet out loud for everybody. Steve had an accident exiting his van yesterday. It was traumatic for him and for all of us that have witnessed him mangled on the asphalt. Although he is hurt, it could have been much worse. Miraculously, he was spared greater injury because he was strapped into his wheelchair and because of the swift action of his care team, a passerby doctor, and a family. I guess his van is preparing him for the fight against Jake Paul. He's at home resting and grateful for his crazy, wonderful life and the support and love from everyone. Signed, Michelle. That is a good wife, man. And I really appreciate how, and, they've been very candid about it. There's a documentary kind of outlining the daily struggle that they go through. So they're not like a social media family making videos and jokes, pretending that everything's okay. But at the same time, Casey, they do kind of keep an upbeat attitude about everything. And that really puts things into perspective when you think about Steve Gleason, all the good he's done, the fact that he got ALS, the diagnosis 13, 14 years ago, and he's still kicking, still being a good role model for his children. Like, I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the wife, the message in that post from his wife. And I really appreciate the shot against Jake Paul as well. That at first I was like, oh, this is really sentimental. But then towards the end, I was like, LOL. Shout out Steve Gleason.
So, man, it is it's really eye-opening, Sometimes, I have a rough day. For me, a rough day is like, working late hours, computer shutting down, like, computer freezing up, having a headache. Like, that's my bad day. This is a dude that really doesn't have much control over a whole lot of his body. Can't swallow, can't really walk and talk freely and all that good stuff. And it's perspective, man. The things that I am able to do on my bad days are things that other people would kill to be able to do. And the fact that they have that ability to stay positive through that firestorm is unbelievable. The Gleason family are unbelievable inspirations. And thankfully, Steve's okay. And God willing, man, we'll have him with us another 13, 14 more years with the ALS for sure.
Well said. And I don't know if you ever tried the Gleason IPA, his beer, but it's actually pretty
good?
Yeah, it's pretty tasty, man. And I'm not a big beer connoisseur. My friends make fun of me because I go to these places that have all these nice beers on tap, and I'll get like a Miller Lite or a Bud Light. But I like the Gleason IPA. There used to be a bar that had it, and I went back this past weekend for the first time in a long time, and they didn't have it, so I was disappointed. So shout out to Steve Gleason. Really like the message there. As we transition here, Casey, and talk about our worst things. There were a lot of bad things from this weekend, but for Casey G, what was the worst thing he saw this weekend?
I saw some of the worst coaching that you'll ever see in football this weekend at the end of the Arizona State and BYU game. I'm over here thinking, and by the way, I don't have any money on the game or nothing, so it's not like I'm living and dying by the result. But I'm watching as Arizona State gets the football back 28-23 late in the game. BYU has like a timeout left, something like that. And Arizona State, okay, so they get the ball back with 58 seconds. Arizona State has the ball at the 7-yard line. They run a dive, get to the 3-yard line. BYU calls timeout. Then they do some stupid thing where the quarterback runs backwards for like 25 yards, and then they do that again, and before you know it, they're at like near midfield, and then they take a delayed game penalty, and there's like 7 seconds left. They roll the quarterback out, and he like panics because there's not a whole lot of pressure in his face, just panics and throws the ball out of bounds, and the crowd thinks the game's over. They storm the field. It takes them forever and a day to get them off the field. The game's not over. There's 1 second left. And by the way, that throwaway was on 4th down. So now, oh, yeah, BYU's getting the ball back when this is absolutely unnecessary. There's no reason for this game to have gone down this way. BYU gets one final play. They throw a Hail Mary down the field. They catch the Hail Mary, get tackled at the 3. Mario, remember last year in Miami, should have taken these. They didn't. They fumble and they lose. If BYU completes that Hail Mary in the end zone, A, it would have had college football playoff implications. B, that would have been the most embarrassing loss in the history of the sport.
Yeah, it probably makes the argument for it for sure. I mean, that would have been like the guy on the Bears a few weeks ago, celebrating the game being over before the Hail Mary. Or I'll never forget your boy on the Wizards way back in the day. In a game against the Raptors, they were up by 3, and it was almost the same exact thing. Like, he threw the ball high in the air with a few seconds left, thinking, I'm going to get it all the way up there, like close to the roof. Surely the clock's going to run out. It doesn't. Morris Peterson, future New Orleans Hornet, catches it, drains the 3 at the buzzer. The team with the guy that threw the ball loses, and max contract was set up, right? So apparently he's upset about that, according to this Clutch Points article, and he's upset about the fact that he's not on the Knicks yet. Like, according to this article, he's always wanted to play for the Knicks, even before the draft lottery. Some people saw his reaction after that and said he wanted to play for the Knicks. And given how things are going with the Pelicans, he does not want to be in New Orleans anymore. He wanted to be in New York. This agency didn't get it done, and that's why he cut ties with this agency. I think that's totally bogus. There are definitely conversations to be had, I think, about Zion's commitment and Zion's conditioning and plenty of legitimate conversations. But I do not think that's true. He only has one anonymous source. We'll compare that to the Athletic article about Coach O in a little bit. But I assume this anonymous source is probably somebody who's affiliated with the Knicks or roots for the Knicks, but I don't think it's anybody that has actual influence with the New York Knicks. So, again, not saying there's no smoke there, but this article, I think, is completely bogus.
I'll say this, and I don't necessarily disagree, but if there is some truth to this and Zion wants to be in New York and ends up, asking out of New Orleans, and it goes down this way through like the anonymous sources stuff, and he doesn't, come out and publicly say it himself and just kind of milks injuries until his tenure in New Orleans runs out, then he's the biggest coward in the history of the NBA. Now, again, that's all hypothetical, right? That's 100% me just painting a story, broad strokes, as something that might not even be real. But if it turns out that there's validity to this, he would be a bigger villain than Anthony Davis when he left. He'd be a bigger villain than a whole lot of these other guys that we see force their way out of situations. So, good God, I hope it's not true because, that would be really nasty.
Yeah, and I really don't think it is, man. I think it's just a situation of bad luck, or his body's just not built to play the game. Like, I think it's legitimate injury concerns. Like, I don't think, and I'm not saying he's like, the perfect student, like he does everything right, but I don't think that's the biggest problem when it comes to Zion Williamson right now. I think it's just the Pelicans are in a bad spot right now. He's injured, and it's easy to write stuff like this. That being said, there are a lot of interesting things to think about here because, like I said, the Pelicans technically can waive Zion after this season with no financial ramifications if he doesn't play. But if he does play this season, if he gets back, he can maybe make some of his money. And according to this article, 20% of his salary for next season will become guaranteed if he passes all 6 of his weigh-in checkpoints this season. And we know that was a challenge for him in the past. But again, money is on the line here. You would think he would be ready for that kind of thing. And the article also says that the final 20% of his salary gets guaranteed again if Zion plays in at least 61 games. But he can only miss he can only miss like 3 or 4 more games, or he's going to miss that mark. He's already missed 11 out of his 17. So he's going to, if he really does want to be in New York, if he is doing what you're saying, he's going to be like Ben Simmons and sacrifice millions and millions of dollars to get there. So I don't really think that's the case. Clutch Points is not like The Athletic to me. It's not really a reputable, thing. I don't even know the name of the guy that wrote this, Chris Puricine. Have you ever heard of Chris Puricine?
I've heard of Clutch Points, but not that particular reporter.
Like, you're not going to get scoops from them. This is not coming from Shams. It's not coming from Woj. So, again, not saying everything's hunky-dory with Zion, but I am saying that this is a poor attempt at journalism.
Probably so. It is a little funky, is why he would fire his agent like in the middle of the season. That's kind of funky. But Brandon Ingram did the same thing too. Though I understand Brandon Ingram probably has a little bit more at stake here. He's trying to get max money. He's probably, frankly, not all that thrilled that that situation didn't get resolved in the offseason. We'll see. But man, to a greater degree of worry for the Pelicans is you're 4-13, and you got to get yourself out of this damn quicksand that you're in right now, or you're going to be lost. I mean, the Western Conference is too competitive. You can't be 15 games below 500 and get out of it. You got to start winning right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of season left. Not saying that, you shouldn't be worried, but DeJounte Murray was at least on the injury report today, listed as out. They're going to get McCollum back this week. Like, slowly but surely, things are going to get better. The question, to your point, is will it be too late by then for the Pelicans to make a run? So we'll see what happens there. But before we move on to your worst thing, I just want to say that it was a great job by David Griffin. I think putting all those stipulations in the contract in a day and age where players in the NBA have like all the power when it comes to negotiating and picking their next team and things like that. The Pelicans have a pretty good situation in terms of leverage, at least with Zion Williamson.
Yeah, and hey, look, if Zion truly is disgruntled and truly doesn't like the way that that's all worded, again, hypothetical, you agreed to it. I watched the episode of South Park last night where Apple kidnaps all the people for agreeing to the terms and conditions. You agreed to it. You shouldn't have made that commitment if you didn't want to stick to it. And my God, dude, you're a professional athlete making hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of your contract. Hire a damn chef and eat well. It's not that hard, dude. Like, if you really want to be at that upper echelon, which he claims that he wants to do, it's really not that hard to, be in shape.
You know what the funny thing is? My parents' house in Kenner is in a very close neighborhood as Zion's neighborhood. Like, it's not the same exact neighborhood. Zion lives in this gated community, but I know where he lives because I have a friend that lives there. He's neighbors with him. And so many times I just want to break in there and be like, Zion, like, get your stuff together, dude. Like, that's a unique situation I think I'm in, but I struggle with it sometimes, honestly.
Yeah, probably wise to not ever make good on that. But I understand the frustration and the desire for sure.
Yes, I'm not like some of these people on Twitter that were yelling at Bryce Underwood that would probably do that if they knew where he lived.
Or that were breaking into Dan Campbell's house because, heaven forbid, he not win the Super Bowl in Detroit. Right?
After 40 years of not going to the playoffs. That's insane, man. But fans are going to fan, man. And it was not a good weekend for Indiana fans as we get into our college football recap here, Casey. I was wrong about this one. I thought Indiana could at least compete. I'll wear the hat. Just given the schedule so far and given how bad I thought Ohio State was, I thought they would compete. And they did that for about a half, Casey, but Ohio State scores right before halftime. They hit them with a flurry of scores in the third quarter, and it goes from tie game to being completely out of hand. And now Ohio State is in a pretty good spot, man. All they got to do is beat Michigan next Saturday, which is at home, by the way, and they're back in the Big Ten championship game with a chance to avenge that loss against Oregon, their only loss of the season so far. For Indiana, it sucks, not going to lie, not just to lose the game, but to not be competitive, but still only have one loss, still having a pretty good season, and given how things went in the SEC this weekend, probably still not the worst situation for Indiana to be in, but just not ready for the lights at the end of the day. Hoosiers had 151 total yards in the entire game, their lowest output of the season, and it was just not a good showing. Again, just one loss, but Ohio State gets a big win. Do you think any more highly of Ohio State after that game?
No. Look, there was some fluky things, some special teams things that didn't go Indiana's way. Play or two here or there, the game is far tighter. Indiana's going to still get into the playoff, and they probably deserve that at this point, right? Now, the one thing that makes me a little uncomfortable about this whole scenario and this whole situation is Indiana is probably locked in now, Mario, and we want to know why? Is because they're not going to their conference championship game. They don't have a chance to lose to an Oregon or an Ohio State. Tennessee kind of in the same boat. They're looking real good to make it to the college football playoff game. Why? Because they're not going to Atlanta. And I really think, and golly, man, this sounds sacrilege for a college football fan to say this. Doesn't it feel like we're kind of moving away from the college, conference championship era? Like, it feels like there are a lot of teams now that are seeded 7th or 8th, don't make their conference championship games, and they're like, yeah, we're okay with this. We don't have a chance to lose and get knocked out.
Yeah. That seems to be the prevailing sentiment for a lot of people.
Lane Kiffin said it publicly last week.
I think him and somebody else, like multiple SEC coaches, have said that. And yeah, man, it's kind of unfortunate, man. That's, I think, one of the drawbacks of this system. But it's also interesting. Things are going to shake out the way they shake out, and so many teams, if you look at it, still kind of have an opportunity here. But it does suck. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of hoping Indiana could prove some of the naysayers wrong. Like there is a lot of SEC bias out here, Casey. I'm not going to lie, and some of it is just subjective opinions, and some of it I agree with. But some people just wanted Indiana to die. So for those people, I am not happy. But again, they just the lights were a little bit too bright. I think you have to give Ohio State a lot of credit. They knew what was on the line. They knew what's on the line next week. And had Ryan Day lost that game, that would have been the end of the tenure. Now they have new life.
Well, until they, perhaps maybe lose to Michigan Saturday, then it would be all over again in a different way. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm just saying, it's crazy with the record that he has. The fact that he has to live week by week out there, it's insane, the expectations that Ohio State has. Maybe even worse so than like an LSU or an Alabama, because Day goes like 11-1 every year, and they want to hang him because the one loss is to Michigan every year.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be pretty restless down there if you think about it. Their last title was, 10 years ago, the 2014 season, when Mike Thomas and Zeke Elliott were still over there. And since then, like, Ryan Day was kind of like Les Miles after Nick Saban. Like, he took over for Meyer, not saying his job was easy, but everything was in place for them to have success. And they've had so many good teams over that time, but it has to be frustrating to never break through and actually win the thing, especially when Michigan did.
I was about to say, that's what hurts.
At the very, very end with Jim Harbaugh, when he already had one foot out the door to go to the NFL. So it's kind of make or break, I think, for Ryan Day, either way.
That's what hurts, is the fact that Michigan did it last season. So those folks over there are like, well, wait a minute. If they're able to do it, why can't we? They better blow out the Wolverines this weekend and look impressive doing it.
Yeah, that's going to be a big game. And, man, Wednesday's show, we're going to preview rivalry week. That's going to be a lot of fun, especially this season. We've seen so much drunkenness, right, especially in the SEC. And as far as this weekend goes, we talked a little bit already about that Florida upset over Ole Miss. But to go into greater detail, that was a big, big win for Florida. They beat LSU last Saturday, obviously, and it was the first time they beat ranked opponents in consecutive weeks since 2008, when Urban Meyer and Hernandez and Tebow and all those guys were still there. So it's been a really, really long time. And I think it's time to give Sunbelt Billy some props,
yes.
Casey.
Yes.
I've been complimentary of him in the past. The man's team still believes in him. But I also kind of think it's like being at the casino, right? And you get there and you lose. You get there with your budget and you lose it all. And at the very end, you get on a hot streak, you're doing really good, you're feeling well, and you make your money back. But at the end of the day, you still kind of broke even.
Yeah.
You didn't really accomplish anything, right? And that seems to kind of be the case with Florida. Like, in other words, they better build on this momentum. Lagway better not be a flash in the pan, and they better translate this into some actual success. So I'm not going to give Billy too much credit, but his back was against the wall. A lot of people were already firing him, and he still deserves some credit, if anything, for ruining LSU season and for ruining Ole Miss's season now.
Well, dude, they're really young, man. They're playing a lot of young players. They have a pretty good recruiting class coming in. And they lost to Tennessee in overtime earlier this season, so that's one that they could have had.
Yeah, with their quarterback getting hurt that game.
I was about to say, if Lagway doesn't get hurt against Georgia, they were very competitive in that game. So they have been very competitive. They haven't been making fools of themselves this season throughout the course of the game. The only game that really got away from them was the opener against Miami. They got crushed, and then they lost to Texas. But again, that's two college football playoff teams. So outside of that, they've been competitive. Napier, as you said, we could debate and discuss the X's and O's. I don't think that, some of the schemes that they do offensively are maybe the best. They don't score as much as I think maybe they potentially could. But the guys believe that they're playing hard, and that matters a whole lot in today's day and age. I don't think that they're going to have like a transfer portal exodus or anything like that. I think people there are under the expectation of we're going to be better next year. Let's go get it.
And as far as Ole Miss goes, from their point of view, terrible loss for them, 10-point favorite. They lose for the first time in 4 weeks, and they also are all but out of the college football playoff now. And you talked about Jackson Dart a little bit earlier, Casey, him looking drained. He was not impressive in the game to me at all. And like Matt Corral before him, like these guys that Kiffin has had, I don't think he's had a truly, really good quarterback. In other words, somebody who you can take the onus off of him and be a coach on the field a little bit, like Jaden Daniels was for LSU a couple of years ago. And there are other things holding Ole Miss back, but ultimately I think that's what's been holding them back. And he's had a great season. He's put up good numbers. He should have plaques and be remembered at Ole Miss, but I don't see him doing much of anything in the NFL. Like Matt Corral, like the guys that Kiffin has had in there. And not to put everything on him, but I feel like they needed him in a spot like this, and he definitely came up short in the Swamp.
Not trying to pick on like a kid here, but where the hell's Walker Howard, dude? Like he transfers, he leaves LSU, goes to a school in the same conference, and like he's not even the backup there. He's now a sophomore. Like this was a guy that LSU fans thought should have been the starter as a true freshman. Now, granted, LSU fans are a little illogical at times, but like. God damn, like you can't even be the backup at Ole Miss. Like your quarterback situation isn't the greatest in the world. I was watching that thinking like, golly, what went wrong there? Something went wrong there that he's not the starter, and then he's also not even the backup there.
Yeah, he was so hyped up coming out of college.
Yeah, they thought he was going to be the starter as a freshman.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, maybe is that a Lane Kiffin problem? Like, are you being too authoritarian, like with your system, not letting guys be dynamic? But that's a good question, man. And that question definitely should have been asked given how Jackson Dart was playing. And like I said, it creates a very interesting weekend scenario here because some of these teams are going to be all the way out of, their goals in the playoff race. What's going to happen in the Iron Bowl? What's going to happen in the Egg Bowl next week? This definitely creates for some intrigue, I think, and maybe some more upsets next week.
Well, Ole Miss is a 27-point favorite in the Egg Bowl, so they better not have any drama there. Mississippi State's pretty bad, but you never know. Crazy things happen sometimes in these big rivalry matchups. Nick Saban said it on College Game Day when he was talking about A&M and Auburn. Nick said, hey, look, I've never had a game where we played well at Auburn. He's tried to say crazy things happen there. I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama has issues with Auburn again coming up on Saturday. Crazy things tend to happen when those types of schools get together and face one another, especially knowing that an Auburn team is going to be playing to try to become bowl eligible. Oh, I think Alabama's going to catch hell on Saturday.
Yeah, that's why that win for Auburn was so big yesterday. They still have something to play for, and that game is always drunk. They should have lost last year. If Alabama gets the 4-down play at the very end, that's going to be a really fun game. And as far as the current iteration of Alabama, I honestly had an inkling that maybe Oklahoma would cover in this game, Casey, pull a slight upset, rally for Brett Venables, the same we were just talking about with Florida and Billy Napier. But they smoked Alabama.
Yeah, it was not competitive.
And I was really impressed with Venables' game plan. And it made me honestly think just how behind LSU is. This is a coach that I very much respect, not just as a head coach, but was the architect of those defenses at Clemson that were so good. And Jalen Milroe was just lost in the sauce. Like, Venables had him in hell. 11 of 26 passing, 164 yards, 3 interceptions. More importantly, on the ground, 7 yards on 15 carries. This is a guy that had 4 touchdowns and 1,000,000 yards against LSU. So I was just really impressed with that. Also, Alabama got destroyed in the trenches. I think that's been kind of like their kryptonite the last couple of years, even in the later years with Nick Saban. In the second quarter, Casey, these stats are insane. Oklahoma outgained Alabama 118-15 in the second quarter, and they had the ball for over 11 of the 15 minutes. Like, Alabama normally doesn't get killed like that in the trenches.
And this is an Oklahoma offense that's terrible. Like, they had scored single digits in most of their SEC games. Like, this is not the 19 LSU offense doing this to them. This is an Oklahoma offense that was awful. That's what was so eye-opening. I remember, in fact, I was watching the LSU Vanderbilt game, and Jordan Rodgers said, Oklahoma's winning 17-3, and then he literally said, how the hell does Oklahoma have 17 points? and that was kind of the thing. Like, they rushed for 200-plus yards. They were doing what they wanted to do. They hadn't shown this at all season long, man, and they just lined up and they bullied Alabama. Thing that scared me is they were able to get all that pressure on Milroe. They were keeping him in the phone booth, right? The defensive ends were rushing straight and saying, hey, you're going to either run right up the middle and where we're going to have a wall there with some linebackers. You're not getting outside. And to think that they had that game plan, it just makes me worry. They're going to rough up Nussmeier on Saturday, try to make that an ugly game. Hopefully LSU has a plan to combat that.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. And I'm just nodding my head in frustration, man. It doesn't seem that hard. Like, keeping him in the pocket. Like, it's so frustrating what he did to LSU 2 years in a row. But it is a good win for Oklahoma. You know, they have a good run-heavy offensive identity going right now. Jackson Arnold still didn't do very much in a game. I would still have questions about him as my future quarterback, especially with what Tyler Gabriel is doing at Oregon. But big win for Oklahoma, and Brett Venables kind of keep off the hot seat at least for now.
Yeah, they were a one-win SEC team before that one, and then they show up and just blow out Alabama. Like, that's crazy. That was the most surprising result of the weekend to me by far.
Yes. Last point I wanted to make about that game, shout out to Xavier Robinson for Oklahoma. He had 107 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game. It's a cool story because he was listed 5th on the depth chart going into that game.
Ooh.
But he got more carries because Javante Barnes, who was their starter, was out with injury, and the starter on Saturday fumbled early in the game, wasn't playing well. The coach had a feeling about Robinson, put him in the game, and he showed out. And stories like that, especially in today's age of college football, you know, with the NIL and some of these players being prima donnas, like stories like that I appreciate. So shout out to Xavier Robinson.
Next man up, baby. NIL era. It's awesome to hear a story like that.
Yes, and like I said earlier, it's about to be the saddest Iron Bowl in a very long time. The game is in Alabama this year.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they're not very happy with the head coach. Auburn, I guess, is coming in with a little bit more momentum. But given how that series went for a long time, has to be a pretty sad day in old Alabama.
Alabama, an 11-point favorite in that one in Tuscaloosa. You know what's crazy is, I mean, I hate to say it, they're going to still have something to play for. They're going to only be a couple of spots outside of that top 12. So they're going to be laying in the weeds, trying to get an impressive win. There's going to be some gamesmanship. If they have a chance to score a late touchdown or whatever, they ain't taking no knee. They're going to get some style points. It's going to be a very interesting Saturday for both of those teams.
So I think I'm going to pound Auburn. I'm not going to lie. Just given the situation, I love Auburn in that game, at least with the points. But we'll see. We'll give some formal picks later on in the week. As far as my last SEC topic here, Casey, all of my focus right now is on today's show. As we talk about Texas A&M getting upset by Auburn. And I know you saw the Mike Elko soundbite when he was talking about, putting your focus on Auburn, not against Texas. And he straight up said, all of our focus is on Texas. Auburn. And it probably should have been a little bit more on Auburn because they get upset 43-41. And like I said, this one killed my soundbite. But I'm sure a lot of LSU fans were really happy about this one. And there's still some opportunity for Texas A&M. They play at Texas next week, and the winner of that game goes to the SEC title game. They host Texas, actually, in College Station. But still a very disappointing loss for the Aggies.
It was so frustrating, man, because as I'm watching the game, I'm seeing, especially early, he started to play better late, but especially early, I'm seeing again an Auburn team just keep Marcel Reed in the pocket, make him throw, couldn't do a whole lot. Now, later in the game, he did start to hit some passes. Stats got a lot better. But that was my biggest takeaway, was not so much, A&M losing or whatever. It was the fact that since they've beaten LSU, they've gotten blown out by South Carolina, and they've lost to Auburn. They're not very good. And LSU had them by the balls. They were beating them in the second half. Total control of the game. Up more than one score. Had a chance to even go up 3 scores. You're driving. Nussmeier throws that quirky interception, gives them a damn short field. They say, okay, we're in the red zone now. It's a great time to make a quarterback change. The rest, as they say, is history. You had that game by the throat, and you let go of it. You lost it, and that might be the reason why you are not going to the college football playoff and somebody else is.
Man, yeah, it's still just year one for Elko, I would say. Given how things were with Jimbo Fisher, that's still a successful season, but tail end of the season, definitely what they have to work on, right? And for Auburn, it is a big win, Casey, but I'm curious what some of the radio shows like ours and like the Auburn, Montgomery, Alabama area are saying, because I know there are a lot of old heads out there that were upset about the fact that Auburn stormed the field after this game. They didn't tear down any goalposts. They didn't put anything in the river or anything like that. But this was a once proud program, man, Casey. I could tell from your reaction you think this is a little bit of a boomer take. But 5-6, 2-5 in the SEC. I would never storm the field after anything. But whatever. I guess that's how things are at Auburn now.
Like, people get so upset about this every week, dude. Like, it's a monkey see, monkey do thing. People are happy and excited, and like, as long as you ain't hurting anybody. The thing that I have issue with is now that we're seeing this trend of people storming the field too early.
Yeah.
Oklahoma stormed the field too early. The Arizona State and BYU. Like, if you're going to do it, do it. But wait till the damn game's over before you do it, man. That's 2 games this weekend where people stormed the field, and the game wasn't even finished yet.
Yeah, they should just play it through, like playing the elements, like with Happy Gilmore. I mean,
I said the same thing in the Arizona State game, Martin. The ball's at midfield. All the students are in the opposing end zone. There's one play left. Just finish the damn game. Yeah. Why did we have to get every single one of the people back in there? We're not using that end zone. We're not using that goalpost. Just finish the game.
Yeah, even if you were, do it. I mean, the guy at Cal back in the day during the play.
The band is on the field.
Yeah, he had to maneuver through the whole band and then even truck the guy at the very end for good emphasis. But that would be the drawback. You get to hit the students. And honestly, that's this is a hot topic. But I feel like if you're a student in that situation, everything is out the window. Like everything the players and coaches do are in self-defense at that point. And I don't know if you saw the shot at the very end of the Alabama game, but DeBoer straight up pushed one of the Oklahoma students out of the way. That was pretty funny.
Self-preservation, baby. You're trying to get back to the locker room. That's their field. That's not the students' field. That's their field until everybody's out of there.
Yep. So maybe, not much from the talk as an LSU fan, but I do enjoy kind of the misery of Auburn, even through, even with this win, still 5 wins all year. You can argue it's Coach Freeze's biggest win of his tenure so far, which is pretty sad. But again, that provides some serious motivation going into this Alabama game. And if you look at Auburn's season so far, they had double-digit leads in the second half against both Oklahoma and Missouri. So those were 2 really bad losses. Maybe this one somewhat makes up for it. But either way, for Hugh Freeze's tenure, I feel like next week is going to be really big.
So the one thing I would say about Auburn, and I didn't realize this until I was doing a little research this weekend, they're recruiting exceptionally well. They're actually ahead of LSU right now in their recruiting rankings. So for the people that are poo-pooing on Hugh and the season that they're having, next season should be better. I don't know if they're going to be in the portal and super active there, whatever it may be, but they have the number 5 ranked class in the country right now. So they are recruiting very well. They are trying to restock the cupboard, so to speak. So maybe this time next year, Auburn might be that 8-4, 9-3 type team that we're used to them being.
This sickens me because I don't think Hugh Freeze is a very good human being. Like anybody who parades around and says they're a nice person and religious and all that and cheats on their wife with hookers, like, I'm sorry, I don't respect you. That's just how I am. So that being said, I still give Hugh Freeze a little bit of credit because he, unlike the past coaches at Auburn, I think kind of tamed expectations. Like, he's been realistic with the fans. Not like Brian Kelly saying we're going to compete now and get all these recruits. He said we're going to kind of have to trust the process a little bit, play young guys this year, be patient. And that might just work for him. But again, I feel like next week's going to go a long way in convincing fans things are good versus not good.
Just don't get blown out. Be competitive. I don't think you necessarily have to win the game. But don't do like LSU did and lose by 1 million and Milrow rushes for 300 yards. If you do that, you let everybody know you got to pulse, take that momentum into the offseason.
Speaking of LSU, did want to talk about that athletic article about Brian Kelly, but LSU did win a game for the first time this month. That was really nice.
They played pretty well, too.
They did, and specifically, Casey, I'll give credit to the LSU defense. And again, a little frustrating because you're able to implement this against Pavia and Vanderbilt. You keep them in the pocket. You don't let them beat them with your legs. And LSU had given up 107 points during this 3-game losing streak, but they played a lot better against Vanderbilt, 308 yards of total offense all game for the Commodores. And LSU on defense was flying around a little bit. And give them credit because early in this game, Casey, things looked really, really bad. LSU goes 3 and outs on their first possession. Pavia connects on a 70-yard touchdown pass. And on the very next kickoff, I don't know if you saw, but one of the special teams guys from LSU basically got his butt pushing the returner. Like, it was a weight room moment against freaking Vanderbilt. So I put up a video on Twitter. I was really upset about that. I'm sure Tommy Moffitt was having a drink and laughing somewhere, but things didn't look good. I do credit LSU for staying together, playing a decent Vanderbilt team. You know, this isn't your older brothers, Vanderbilt Commodores, and getting a win. Still a lot of bad this season, but the team had to have this one. There was a lot of noise all week, and they persevered. So props to LSU.
So you mentioned the start. Opening kickoff, you get the ball, you fumble the opening kickoff. You recover, but you fumble. First drive, you're playing 3rd and 2. You have a false start penalty. It's 3rd and 7. You have to punt. You punt. It's not a very good punt. It's like 38 yards, something like that. Then the first play, they go down the field. So I'm thinking, my God, this is going to be a long Saturday. But then, you know, they did kind of clean up their act. And look, I'll say this. I have been critical on this show and on my morning show about Garrett Nussmeier. He was good Saturday. 28 of 37, 332 through the air with a touchdown. he moved better in the pocket. Like, that's the thing, man. We're not looking for Garrett Nussmeier to run like Jaden Daniels. We're just looking for him to not have cement blocks for feet. He was moving. He was getting outside. He was throwing on the run. And quite frankly, Mario, he had 9 incompletions in 37 attempts. He had 4 or 5 drops. I mean,
Yes.
if not for that, his stats would have been even better. That was one of the better games that he played. They ran the football effectively, 142 yards rushing. Josh Williams did a good job in between the tackles, defensively flying to the ball. I don't know if they were playing hard for the coach. I don't know if they were playing hard to improve their draft positions, maybe a little bit of both. But they played hard. At a time when everyone would have understood if they wouldn't have, they played hard. And that was a good win for them against a Vanderbilt team that, hell, beat Alabama and had some good wins and was playing with some moxie to get that win. That was a good one for LSU. They played a clean game for one of the first times this year.
Well said, partner, and they really needed it. And I'm about to stick up for Brian Kelly in a moment when we talk about this hit piece, but I'll say that effect, Casey, was because of the players. Like, they had a players-only meeting this week. They've had to talk a lot to the press, and I'll give them credit. They showed their faces. They answered all the tough questions. You know, guys like Will Campbell and others had to talk all week about how disappointing it is to not get to your goals, and is the team still together? Do you hate your head coach? Like, that takes some perseverance. They were asked that all week, so I do give them credit for doing that, but I'm not giving Brian too much credit here. I think things still are not great at LSU, and I was about to get really pissed, Casey. I think you saw me exhaling relief just now because I thought you were about to say that I need to give a lot of credit to Josh Williams. And he had a good game. 14 carries, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I see a lot of victory lapping with LSU fans against other LSU fans that have been critical of Josh Williams this year. And it's like, excuse me, he still had less than 100 yards against Vanderbilt. He still had as many carries as Caden Durham, which should not be a thing. And he still shouldn't have gotten those carries. Like, I don't hate the guy. Props. He's a walk-on.
No, you hate the guy.
He's probably made a lot of NIL money. But no, that pissed me off a little bit when I saw people saying, oh, you doubted Josh Williams all season. He proved you wrong. Like, no, he still proved me right.
Yeah, he played well, though, man. Look, and he had 4 catches for 61 yards, too. That's worth mentioning. The one thing that I think is interesting is Brian Kelly came out today. He's not expecting any type of, like, mass exodus in the portal. He has said today that he thinks C.J. Daniels will be back next season. He said today that he thinks there's a chance that Harold Perkins will be back next season, which I'm not as sold on that one. There's a lot of debate and discussion about whether or not Nussmeier is going to be back next season. So, like, we mentioned this a second ago. Whit Weeks, his little brother, committed today. Wes Weeks is planning on being back. So you're going to have 3 Weekses in the locker room next year. Like LSU is not expecting to lose 15, 20 guys to the portal like a Florida did after Mullen or like an Alabama did after Saban left. So that's all some pretty good signs.
Yeah.
Another pretty good sign is that this weekend you had one of your 5-star defensive backs announce publicly, my recruiting is closed. I'm going to LSU. That's a good sign. So your recruiting class is not in shambles. You lost one guy. It's not in shambles. And then now the interesting thing of this, Mario, is that Brian Kelly has publicly changed his tune. Last year, we ain't in the market of buying players. He said to the sideline reporter on the SEC Network broadcast, and he also reiterated it today at his media day. Okay, yeah, we lose Underwood. That sucks. But that's a bunch of millions of dollars that we're going to revert to the rest of the roster. He said they're going to be very active in the transfer portal. He said this is going to be his largest transfer portal class since he's been at LSU, which is shocking to hear because year one they got a ton of guys. So LSU is going to be active, and I think BK knows this roster needs to look drastically different. And I don't think that we're going to be seeing them get the mid-major guy that's from Louisiana that was slept on. They're going to be getting some high-end guys this year. I think they're going to be changing their approach a little bit.
They're going to be in the business of paying players.
Yep.
But now they can be because they don't have to give $12 million to one single guy. And, yeah, props to Brian Kelly. You look at somebody like Mickey Loomis, who doesn't want to admit things are broken, that wants to be stubborn and not change things. I agree. Give Brian Kelly props for at least that. And they do need to be better. If there's a UL Monroe lineman that's really good, he cannot go to Tulane. Like, just simple things like this. It can't happen. So props to Brian Kelly for seeing that. And speaking of Brian Kelly, there was a hit piece, a smear article, whatever you want to call it, written by the
That's well said.
Yeah, written by The Athletic. And we'll talk about this in great detail, Casey. I think there's some legitimacy to this article, but it was written by Ralph D. Russo and Bruce Feldman, both with The Athletic. Before anything, keep in mind that Bruce Feldman is really good friends with Ed Ogeron, head coach, somebody who probably doesn't like Brian Kelly very much, given that he succeeded him. So take all this with a grain of salt. So I wouldn't make too much of this. I love Coach O, and I don't care for BK as much as anyone. But again, keep in mind that Bruce Feldman wrote this. So take all this with a grain of salt. And basically, the theme of the article is that Brian Kelly doesn't connect well with his players, and that Brian Kelly has not done a very good job with recruiting. And there could be some legitimacy when it comes to the recruiting thing, but with the rest of it, there are a lot of anecdotes here about his former staff. It talks about how he didn't keep Raymond before he brought him back. It talks about how he didn't keep Moffitt, who's now at Texas A&M having success. But the one interesting interviewee here in this article, Casey, was Charles Turner. Charles Turner, a former LSU center. He was a starter in 22 as well as last season in 23. And he talked about how he barely talked with Brian Kelly and how it was a big adjustment for guys on the team that played under Coach O, who had an open door policy where every time they wanted to see their new head coach, they basically had to schedule an appointment. So not as open as the last head coach was. And it talks about the recruiting again. It talks about how last year LSU was ranked 6th in the country, but of the 26 signees, only 10 of them were from Louisiana. Like, they're not prioritizing the state very much, and only 15 members of that team from last year's recruiting class are still with LSU. Most notably, Lance Hurd is with Tennessee, where he now starts. So that class, I'd argue, should be the backbone of next year's LSU team, but instead there are some big holes there, right? So there are some questions for sure about coordinator hires, about recruiting, but as far as like his style goes, I wouldn't put too much weight into that. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of coaches that have similar policies. I've heard players talk about coaches that they've hate, like former players that they've been really successful with, and I've heard them talk about coaches that they've been really successful with that they didn't really talk to very much. So I think that's kind of a case-by-case thing. I think BK is kind of an easy target right now with LSU being how they are. So I wouldn't put too much about like his style and the non-open door policy, but there are some major conversations to be had about recruiting, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. To the stuff about the players not, being accessible and not being as I mean, you really think Nick Saban was like playing PS5 with his guys in the line? No, man. Like, that's just not the way that it's done. There is a little bit of a generational gap there. He's an older guy. He's not from the South. He's not going to be as relatable as Coach O was, who was bringing the dudes to his house for crawfish boils and stuff, literally. I mean, that was stuff that would happen. So it is a little bit of a different situation. But, man, here's the thing. He's going to get this offseason. They're going to change their approach. They have a really good class coming in high school-wise. If he does make good on his promises of getting into the portal and getting some of those top guys, and you return a Nussmeier, and again, that's speculation, he may go pro, you should get back Aaron Anderson and C.J. Daniels. You're going to have Durham, and you're going to add Harlan Berry to the running back room. If you could make some tweaks on defense, like, there is a scenario where LSU could be a really good football team next year, and this time next year, if you were in college football playoff contention, everybody's going to forget about all these hit pieces. Now, the noise becomes, and we talked about this last week extensively, if you have that offseason to try to get it right and you don't, and you're still in this same pickle and this same hole this time next year, that's when the birds are really going to start chirping. We're going to give you one more shot at it. You're replacing Jaden Daniels this year, first-year starter. You admitted you made some mistakes. You got a little continuity on the staff now. Hopefully Baker will be back, not be a head coach anywhere. If this time next year you're still having problems, that's when he's going to have some problems.
Yeah, this is it. And this article puts the onus a little bit on Scott Woodward. And I think that, if the BK era doesn't go well, he doesn't win, that's definitely on him. But I don't think his job is in jeopardy or anything like that. Like, LSU still won a championship in baseball. I don't give him too much credit for the women's basketball one, honestly. I think that was a situation where Kim Mulkey was just mad at the people at Baylor. He kind of just swooped in and took advantage, but still a basketball national title.
Well, I say this. The thing with the women's basketball thing, he was willing to pay millions and millions of dollars to a coach.
That too.
Yeah.
And if they win championships, that's worth the investment. And she's won a championship. Yeah. So I will give him that. But point being, the big one in Baton Rouge, obviously, is football. all. And he didn't hire Coach O. He made it seem like LSU's success was more because of the program and less because of him. And maybe he was a little too cocky in that regard. Like BK coming in, definitely in hindsight, should have kept Corey Raymond. He probably should have kept Tommy Moffitt. But I also understand letting the new head coach, build the team in his vision. So it is true that Woodward is tied to Brian Kelly to an extent, but it's not like if BK doesn't work out and Woodward has to fire him, Woodward will also be fired.
No, I don't think so for sure. But the reality of the situation is this. His last two hires were Jimbo, who didn't work out, and then he gave an asinine extension to on top of that.
Thank you for that.
And then Brian Kelly. So the last two, right now, you don't have a huge bass in the boat right now. You got a couple little flounders in the boat. BK has a chance to change that this time next year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. LSU's got Oklahoma coming up. This is the new kind of manufactured rival that they'll play at the end of the year.
Interesting game.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited for it, man. Last time we saw LSU in Oklahoma, Justin Jefferson was doing the 1, 2, 3, 4 celebration. So LSU's had a lot of success against them, but Oklahoma playing hard, coming off some momentum in that big upset win against Alabama, and it should be a good one in Tiger Stadium.
It should be a good one. Look, you got an Oklahoma team coming in hot after beating Alabama. That would be some great bragging rights for LSU if you could go and beat up on the team that just beat up on the Tide. LSU is a touchdown favorite. They're favored by 7 in that one, so it'll be an interesting test. I'll say this. Venables is going to have a very aggressive attacking defensive scheme to try to make Nussmeier uncomfortable. If Nussmeier plays well through that firestorm, it would be a great step forward for him. And frankly, if you're an LSU fan, you might not be too thrilled by the end result because it could be a step forward that maybe leads him to the NFL draft.
Yeah, man, that's going to be such an interesting situation to follow, man. Just so many layers to the LSU quarterback situation. But good start for Nuss against Vanderbilt. The next couple of games, like the bowl game last year, like high pressure situations, we'll see how Garrett Nussmeier does. Getting towards the end of the show here, Casey, did anything stand out from you from the NFL weekend? I think the game last night was an intriguing one with the Eagles beating the Rams 37-20. And I think you and I were both on the Commanders hype train for a little while.
They're done.
They seem to be going through some stuff, and really in that time, the Eagles have just kept on it, man. This is the same team that should have lost to the Saints week 3 that every single Eagles fan wanted Nick Sirianni fired due to the game management. But you look up, they're 9-2. Besides Detroit, they're probably the hottest team in the NFL. And the acquisition of Saquon Barkley was the best one of the offseason. Better than Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, better than anything that I could think of right now. He breaks the Eagles team record, 255 rushing yards on 26 carries. That's efficiency. Think about that, Casey. Yeah, 26 carries, 255 rushing yards. That is a 9.8 yards per carry average, 2 touchdowns. The Giants' former brass decided it was a good idea to pay Daniel Jones money and not this man.
Who's he play for now?
Yeah, exactly. He played for the scout team, and now he's jobless. So I think he just deserves all the credit in the world. Like, I see people talking about Hurts and about Sirianni and A.J. Brown being back, which has made a big difference. And I don't mean to poo-poo on all those guys, but it feels like a South Park episode sometimes, man. Like, good football player. Give him the ball. The Eagles have done that. That's why they're 9-2.
To me, he should be on the short list for the NFL MVP. I know he's not going to be because it's now become a quarterback-only award. But golly, man, I mean, look at some of the things we've seen him do this year. We saw the Matrix leap that he had a couple weeks ago. And now 200-plus yards. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. Like, he has completely changed that offense around. Some other takeaways that I've had, I think the 49ers are done, dude. They got crushed yesterday. I understand Brock Purdy didn't play, but it's deeper than that. Brock Purdy not playing isn't the reason why he gave up 38 points. Their defense looks old. A lot of their pieces look old. And as physical as they are, I was talking about this with Brian this morning. As physical as they are, Mario, and all the extra games that they've played in the last couple playoffs, the last 3-4 years, just look tired. They look worn down. I don't think that they're – now, look, the West is a mess, and they still have a chance to rally back and maybe win that division. But I don't think that they'll be a factor at the end of it all. Another thing, looking at the other West, the AFC West, Denver's about ready to be really good. I know that this hurts a lot of the Saints fans, and, Chef Scotty, if you're listening, I'm really sorry, bro, but your boy Sean he's not nearly as washed up as a lot of Saints fans maybe thought when he went to Denver. They're 7-5. Mario Bo Nix is getting better and better every week. They really don't have any offensive weapons except for Cortland Sutton right now. Devon Vell was their second leading receiver yesterday. Who the hell is that? like when he gets his pieces there, look out. They're starting to play very good football. And another thing, and I'll take this one away here. Now that Tampa has Mike Evans and those guys back, Atlanta better start winning, because I think Tampa is going to start winning. And there's a scenario in my mind where the Bucs end up winning the damn division again. They're 5-6. Atlanta didn't deliver the knockout punch when they had the chance. And there's a very real scenario where if Atlanta keeps struggling, Tampa might win the damn division again.
They have the clearest path. If you look at the schedule, if you're just being realistic, unless you think the Saints can win out, they do have the realest path. So if you're a realistic Saints fan, you'll own the fact that it's going to be really hard for your team to make the playoffs, but there could still be a very realistic scenario where the Falcons choke this thing away.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That would involve the Bucs winning their 4th straight division title, which I wouldn't be crazy about, but I would take that every day as a Saints fan to see that happen.
Got Carolina twice, got Dallas, got the Saints at home in a game that might not even matter for the Saints in the last week. Like, the Bucs schedule sets up very nicely for them. Now, the thing that hurts, they have to be ahead of Atlanta because they lost twice, so they have to be ahead. Can't be tied. So really, they're 2 games back right now. But they are sitting in a pretty good spot.
Yep. And what makes me really sad about the Denver receiver that you mentioned a second ago is people used to say the same thing about, like, Austin Carr and Lil Jordan Humphrey. Like, who the hell is that? But Sean Payton, man, doing really good work. And I agree. Like, I'm sorry, Chef Scotty. I root for his downfall, too, honestly. But objectively, he's doing a really good job over there, man. And I had a buddy make the point to me. It was actually a couple weeks ago. It was kind of prophetic. So props to my buddy. But he was like, man, you realize if Sean Payton was still here, he'd have Derek Carr as like an MVP candidate right now.
Probably
and
so.
Given how Derek Carr's playing recently and what Sean Payton's doing, yeah, man, I got to say it's kind of hard to disagree with that. So that was a really big win for them. And going back to that Green Bay game against San Francisco, yes, San Francisco looks really bad. I agree with you that division's going to be really intriguing to me to see who wins. I'm not going to put much stock into any team, but Green Bay quietly 8-3, playing really well. If you've been watching their games recently, it's like Jordan Love has been playing somewhat pedestrian, but the acquisition of Josh Jacobs has been everything. And the day that the Raiders let him go, I remember texting our guy Harry Ruiz, like, why did y'all let this guy go? Like, he was clearly y'all's best player, and kind of like Saquon's doing for the Eagles, I think he's giving the Packers a whole different dimension. They're looking really good.
Is LaFleur underrated or what, man? Like, nobody talks about him. He had scuffles with Rodgers. Things didn't go well. All he's done is 13-3, 13-3, 13-4, 8-9, 9-8, now 8-3. He's 64-30, bro. Like, he's really, really underrated. When we talk about best coaches in the NFL, we're going to talk about Andy Reid. We're going to talk about Harbaugh. We're going to talk about all these other guys. LaFleur's name doesn't come out often. We hear about Tomlin, Shanahan. LaFleur's really good.
Yes. He is really underrated. And honestly, I think he had a lot of grace with Aaron Rodgers. Like, it would have been easy just as a human to be like, screw this guy. But he kind of had to sat there and take it. And I'll never forget Aaron, just a small thing that he did that I was like, that's messed up, is every time he talked about LaFleur, he'd be like, Matt, me and Matt. It's like, can you call him Coach Matt? At the very least, just call him Coach Matt. Like,
you see the stuff that came out in New York this weekend about that jerk, about how he doesn't want to play for the Jets next year.
Yeah, dude, nobody wants you. Like, sit the F down. Like, he looks bad. And
go host Jeopardy, bro.
Exactly, and that's karma. So good that's happening to Rodgers, and good for Coach LaFleur. Your Dallas Cowboys got a big win. I can't even say that with a straight face, man. I'm sorry. But, man, how about John Carney reincarnated at the end of the game there? They get a miraculous play. Stadium's going nuts. And your boy pushes the extra point. It wasn't the best snap, but looked like he still could have made it. And the Commanders, man, they were, I think, kind of buying into the hype, drinking the Kool-Aid early on, but coming back down to earth just a little bit now with the 3 straight losses.
First and foremost, the Commanders are done. In true Dan Quinn form, like he did at the end of his tenure in Dallas. At the end of the season, the defense isn't the same. And Kingsbury's offense is struggling. That's the first thing. I think the Commanders are finished. The second thing, did the Cowboys try to lose that game or what? You give up a 90-yard reception for a touchdown. Then you recover the ensuing onside kick. All you have to do is fall down with the ball. You're taking a knee. The game's over. The Mojo runs it back for a touchdown. So now instead of you winning by 1, taking a knee, getting out of here, You're giving them the damn ball back with an 8-point deficit when they just completed a 90-yard touchdown. They get a couple of completions, get down the field, have a Hail Mary. Like, that was the most nerve-wracking, ridiculous. And oh, by the way, I didn't even want the Cowboys to win because they were 3-7. And then now, Mario, I look at their schedule, and I see that in the next 3 games, they got the Giants on Thanksgiving, who they're going to beat. They got Joe Burrow at home, who, the way that they're playing, they might as well win that one. Then they got Carolina. So the Cowboys are on the race now to 7-10, which is what nobody in Dallas wants. Hate it. Absolutely hate it.
Man, playing for McCarthy, at least some of the team.
Yeah, they're playing for McCarthy.
Maybe not Micah, but we'll see, man.
Maybe not Micah.
Like the Saints, they're tying it together way too late, and they still have that stat. Have you seen the stat that the Saints have scored more touchdowns in their stadium this year than the Cowboys have? This was a road game, so that holds true.
Damn. I know Dallas has been terrible at home. Dude, are you looking forward to the Cooper Rush versus DeVito Thanksgiving shootout?
Oh, I'm going to be like 17 Jack Daniel shots deep by the time it starts on Thanksgiving Day. So I think we'll be okay there.
Do you think Brady's going to regret getting into broadcasting, having to spend this Thanksgiving watching that?
Probably. Screw Tom Brady getting Bryce Underwood to go to LSU. I'm not very happy with him right now.
Yeah, he was part of that, wasn't he?
That's enough. If I can go on a little aside here, Casey, maybe I'm totally off, but my brain is thinking that like the donors with LSU have like some pride. They have some decorum. Like, I see so many people clamoring for Todd Graves to come in. It's like Todd Graves doesn't want to put $12 million behind a 17-year-old kid in case it doesn't work out. Like, he's not a guy like No Shame, like Dave Portnoy, that would do something like that and then go brag about it. Like, I think that's one thing that people maybe don't want to talk about too much is that the donors, it's just not a good business decision. Like, you'll get a lot of good press. The people in Baton Rouge will love you, but you might be $12 million in the hole if this literal child doesn't honor all of his commitments. And that's a pretty, just like car insurance is more expensive, right, with younger people, that's a pretty big risk. So that, you would think it's just common sense, but I think that is holding LSU donors from making some of these donations.
You know how billionaires become billionaires by not being stupid and giving $10, $15 million away to something that's nets you zero return on investment. LSU is going to spend some NIL money, but I don't think it's going to be as wasteful as a guy wearing a crown and a scepter on social media would indicate.
Well said. Going a little off track here. Going a little longer today since we only have 2 shows, but going back to NFL for a moment, Casey, do have a pretty good Monday night game on deck for tonight at the time of this recording. If you're listening in the future, I apologize, but if you're listening here on Monday, November 25th, we have the Harbaugh Bowl Part 2. I believe it's the second time they played, the first since the Super Bowl in New Orleans a few years ago. And it's an interesting game, man. 2 teams on kind of opposite trajectories. The Ravens going through some things, the consecutive losses. The Chargers off to their best start in a long time at 7-3. And all the common links here, right? Like J.K. Dobbins going up against his former team, the 2 brothers playing. There's a lot of good storylines. But I think just in terms of motivation, the Ravens might want this one a little more. I'm honestly staying away from this one. The Ravens have burnt me recently, but I think I might lean Ravens here as a 2.5-point favorite at L.A. Either way, it should be a great game.
Every time I want to come over to your side and say that the Ravens are a contender, they poo on the field and lose to Cleveland or to the Steelers or to the Raiders like they did earlier. This one, to me, this is more about, in my estimation, how good are the Chargers? The Chargers have won 4 in a row. You beat the Saints, you beat the Browns, you beat the Titans, and you beat the Bengals kind of in a fluky one last week. If the Chargers go and are physically able to handle the Ravens up front, they're for real. They would be 8-3. We would have to consider them one of the contenders. Look, the Chiefs have a really good defense, Mario. The Chiefs' defense has given up 218 points this season. The Chargers have given up a fraction of that. They've given up 145. Their defense is legit. If they could slow down Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry tonight, that would be a big feather in their cap. On the flip side to that, on the Baltimore side, brother, we've been talking about this all year. It's no secret. They're at their best when Derrick Henry is out front leading the offense. I think they have been kind of sandbagging a little bit. I think that they've been trying to preserve Derrick Henry. Well, guess what? You're 7-4. You drop to 7-5. Your playoff spot in general, it becomes in jeopardy. Give Derrick Henry the damn ball 25 times and go win the damn game.
Yeah. This game against his brother, I feel like that might come into play a little bit. And, that's an interesting strategy. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. There's no guarantee he won't get hurt in the playoffs. But for that kind of reasoning is why I'm leaning Baltimore a little bit. But we'll see what happens in the game, man. It should be a really good one. Trying to see if I have any more NFL takeaways. The Saints defeated the bye week, didn't lose to the bye, so that was cool. Slowly but surely getting a little bit healthier, at least more than they were during the losing streak there. But this, we'll talk a little bit more Saints on Wednesday, Casey, but this seems like the litmus test. Like, if they lose to the Rams like they should, everything will kind of go back to normal. We'll see more pieces about, the next head coach and what prospects to look for in the draft. If the Saints win this game, still very unlikely that they make a run, but the fact that it's even still a possibility is a testament to Rizzy. And it's time to start having some serious conversations, I think, about retaining Rizzy if and only if the Saints win this game.
You're facing a Rams team that is not a great matchup for you. They've got some big, explosive playmakers on the outside. You're facing a Rams team that's going to be pissed off because the Eagles came in and physically manhandled them on Sunday Night Football. You're right. The Rams coming in, the opening line is the Rams by a field goal, over under 48.5. This is a big game for Rizzy if he wants to be the full-time head coach. And I don't think – I'm going to go ahead and make my pick now. I think the Rams are going to beat them on Sunday. But everything that you just said is profound. If New Orleans wants to really ignite some real excitement, you beat St. Louis. Listen to me. You beat Los Angeles on Sunday in the Dome and make it happen. Because, look, you beat Atlanta. We all know that was kind of a fluky game. The field goal kicker misses a couple kicks, whatever. You beat Cleveland. Whatever. That's Cleveland. They're in a worse shape than you are. The Rams are not. The Rams are competing for the playoffs. They have a lot of guys that are back healthy after being hurt earlier in the year. This is legitimately a big game for them. The Rams have great incentive to win this game. If you beat them, that'd be a big feather in New Orleans' cap for sure.
This is probably a stupid question. I know it's not all, direct. I know that the Lions got a lot of draft picks in that trade for the Rams, so maybe it's not a legitimate question. But do you think a small part of Matt Stafford kind of wishes he was still in Detroit? Like, all the success they're having. Yes, he finally got the elusive ring, but a game like on Sunday, a big game, like your stadium is surrounded by Eagles fans week to week, it seems like it's not majority Rams fans. So I'm sure the answer to the question is probably no. He's living in L.A. versus Detroit, but some of me has to think if a part of Matt Stafford still kind of wishes he was there. It just seems more genuine, like less corporate than the Rams does.
He got the ring. He got paid. His wife's kind of a Karen. I don't know how much
she's the worst. She's the absolute worst. I hate her. I'm so happy you said that.
I think that he's pretty content. Obviously Detroit's a better situation now, but even like we say with the Anthony Davis trade with the Lakers, until the Pels make a run, the Lakers won the damn trade because they won a championship with Anthony Davis.
Yeah, that's true. They even made the NFC Championship before the Pelicans made the Western Conference Finals. So, yes, you're 100% on the money there. But Detroit's a good story, man. Curious to see what they can do for the rest of the year. As we wrap up here, Casey, I've kind of flirted in the past an idea about introducing a Busta of the Week segment. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know, a Busta is a reference to a TLC song, where she talks about, no scrubs.
Also known as a Busta.
Yeah, so I wanted to start this segment talking about a Busta of the week, like the biggest, the guy that just looks stupid the most this week, right? And for me this week, it's okay if you don't have an entry. Again, I kind of just saw this, not going to lie.
No, I'll find one.
Keyshawn Butte had some takes about
NIL.
Oh,
God, I saw this.
Over the weekend. And on Saturday, he tweeted, NIL messing college football up. Hate seeing people choosing schools based off of money and not opportunity. And I'll be candid with the audience. You know this already, Casey. But before I worked here for Coastal Broadcasting, I was at Guarantee Media, which is in Baton Rouge, ESPN BR 104.5. And I was literally in the building. I wasn't in the studio during the afternoon show, but I was in the building when Keyshawn Butte went in the studio during the 3 to 6 afternoon show at ESPN BR. And he went there with the lawyer. And him and the lawyer, without saying as much, basically bragged about the fact that Keyshawn Butte was staying at LSU and not going to Alabama because this lawyer was paying him the money. Like, the lawyer was basically pounding his chest on the air and on YouTube saying, we're keeping this player because I'm paying him to.
And then what ended up happening?
And yes, he bet on his own games. He had a terrible career, and he left LSU in disgrace. And now he's wasting away with the Patriots, who are terrible. So Keyshawn Butte got his karma, whatever. But to see him say that after doing that with the lawyer and staying at LSU for the money over Alabama, who's your biggest rival, and then bragging about it, like, this dude is completely tone deaf. Like, grow up, Keyshawn Butte, or get some glasses or something. Like, surely we're not talking about the same situation here.
All right, I got you one. It's an easy target. I could do this about this gentleman every Monday, Danny Cannell. Just trying to troll the hell out of everybody this weekend because the SEC has a rough weekend. Gets roasted by Chipper Jones of the Atlanta Braves. I can't read Chipper Jones's tweet because, it wouldn't be appropriate, but go check that out. And then he comes out and he says, all right, well, I figured it'd be time for me to rank my top 12 Atlanta Braves of all time. And he doesn't include Chipper Jones. Like, he's one of those guys that, like, he, A, tone deaf because, bro, your Florida State Seminoles are terrible. B, never knows when to drop the troll, and then C, his comebacks are like not even witty or funny. Like, just stop talking, dude. We get it. You hate the SEC. We get it. You probably don't even actually hate the SEC. This is just the only way you could get attention. Just stop talking, bro. Got owned this weekend by Chipper Jones. Thought that was funny. Got owned by a lot of people in college football. Thought that was funny. Like, just stop, man.
He's a dweeb. I don't mean to be too political here, but he'll always have fans the same way like Sharpereau has fans, or whoever a liberal equivalent of that Breakfast Club has fans. Like, there's always going to be a group of people that hate the SEC no matter what. So Danny Cannell will always have a following. He'll always have a job, but it's become kind of a farce at this point. It's to the point where people almost don't entertain him, which is kind of sad because he is a former player and he probably has a decent amount of knowledge for the game. But from what I see, he wasn't a very good quarterback at Florida State, and I agree. He kind of just needs to go away.
And it's obvious that he's just playing a role, right? We know he doesn't actually believe those things that he's saying. It's just the only way that he could get engagement, so he does it, and he intentionally – like Stephen A. Do you really think Stephen A. hates the Cowboys that much? No, that's a role that he's playing. That's a shtick. And, yeah, man, like – well, here's the thing. When Stephen A. does it, it's actually entertaining. When Danny Cannell did – like, you're a clown, bro.
Yeah, not good. Danny Cannell, total dweeb, as is Keishawn Butte. That was our inaugural edition of Busta of the Week. All right, man, looks like we covered pretty much everything. I see LSU women's basketball is still struggling.
No, they won. Oh. Buzzer beater.
Hell yeah. Who made the buzzer beater?
Player that I never heard of. Let me pull up the name real quick. They made a shot at the buzzer to win the game today. It was one of the incoming transfers that scored it. Let me see. Let's pull this up.
They beat Washington 68-67 due to Fighting Kim Mulkeys.
With 1 second left, Kaylin Gilbert made a layup to change a 67-66 deficit into a 68-67 win.
Man, big win. I see Morrow struggled a little bit. Anisha Morrow, 5 of 17 shooting, 19 points.
So Michaela Williams was terrible tonight, 0 of 9.
Dang. Okay.
No points.
So that's a good team win, man. Shout out to Kim Mulkey. And I'll be candid with you, Casey. We're not going to talk too much LSU whoops on the show. But Kim Mulkey, and this is just my opinion, subjective. I know a lot of people know her and will probably get mad. I think she's kind of a jerk. Like, she's very disrespectful sometimes to media, and she thinks way too highly of herself. I do not want to be her friend. But damn it, she wins. She has a ring on her finger already at LSU, who didn't have a championship the whole time. So unlike with guys like Brian Kelly and stuff, you're allowed to be like that if you win and if the players respect you, which based on this game they do. So shout out to Mulkey.
Yeah, no doubt. Big win. Look, I'll tell you this. The Lady Tigers are not playing the best ball, even though they're 7-0. They kind of struggled against Tulane. They were down at the half against Murray State. So they're figuring some things out, but they're winning while figuring some things out. That's the Mulkey special, brother. Find a way to get a win.
All right. Shout out to the Lady Tigers. We will have one more show this week on Wednesday ahead of the Thanksgiving break. We'll talk about what we're thankful for, Casey, so I'm looking forward to that. We'll preview some Saints versus Rams. We'll talk a little bit of Pelicans as they look to break a losing streak tonight.
And very quick also, while we were talking LSU, men's basketball got a triple overtime win against Central Florida yesterday, so wanted to shout them out as well.
Hell yeah. Shout out Coach McMahon and the crew. That's a big win for them. They're going to at least be fun to watch this year.
They're competitive, dude. Like, they're not going to be, top 25, one seed in the NCAA tournament, but they are going to be fun to watch. I watched a lot of that game yesterday. They got some dudes. They're going to be much improved.
It's a team we could watch again, and I'm still a little sore, not going to lie, at Woodward about how he handled Will Wade. I feel like he should probably still be there, but that's not on McMahon. And McMahon's doing a pretty good job. So looking forward to what that team can do to see what they can do for the rest of the season. Please like us on YouTube, Coastal Broadcasting Network. Please subscribe to the channel. Very grateful for everybody tuning in to there, as well as our SoundCloud account, which has been getting a lot of traffic. Keep listening to us on there. Like us on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a good rating. Really helps the algorithm. Me and Casey appreciate you very much.
Yeah, no doubt. Give us a 5-star rating. That stuff matters, man. That just allows us to show up higher in the libraries and everything like that, and allows us to get a broader audience watching and listening to all of our stuff. And broader audience means that, hey, we're able to do this longer. So that's exactly what we're trying to get accomplished here on Coastal Broadcasting.
Yes, sir. Got to trust the process, and we have been doing that. Very grateful to you for helping us do that. We will talk to you again on Wednesday. For Buddy Miller and Casey Gisclair, I'm Mario Jerez saying good afternoon. Thanks for listening to the pregame podcast. Talk to you soon.